John Doe CK asked us, hey, Vince, I have a preliminary question for you. Can you explain how the ADA works in a client-lawyer relationship? Specifically, does an attorney have to accommodate their client if the client has a disability? The answer is yeah. The same way any business would have to accommodate someone with a disability, so too does your attorney need to accommodate you. The question goes on. There's a couple paragraphs here. If the disability interferes with their ability to work with the attorneys on something that is normally expected, say something like filling out a timeline and doing something like that triggers the disability, especially after the client has a known disability that the attorneys are aware of related to such symptoms. Furthermore, hundreds of pieces of documentary evidence have been sent to the attorney, so shouldn't the attorney just accommodate the client by finishing the timeline? John Doe, no question your attorney should be trying to accommodate you. They should be having the reasonable accommodation dialogue with you. The tough thing about accommodating someone in terms of the timeline, there's a lot you can do to meet with them, do an interview with them, aid them, breaking it up into small portions. There's a lot you can do, right? And different disabilities make the process of sharing your story with your attorney difficult in different ways, right? Like there's plenty of somebody who has a disability that makes it hard for them to type. Well, they might need to record their timeline, right? Someone who has an emotional disability where the recounting of the timeline is especially difficult, and it's difficult for everyone, but especially difficult for that individual. Often what we look at doing is trying to break that up into manageable chunks and maybe do it in an interview format or even do it. Listen, I've done it years ago. Someone had a disability, and the best way for them to recount their story was to ask their therapist to record their sessions and share the recordings with the firm. That works. That's great, right? Now, the idea of the attorney doing the timeline for you, generally going to be a non-starter. And I'll tell you why. They didn't live the story. You can say, listen, I gave you 300,000 pages of documents. Cool. That is all very helpful. That is evidence. It's not the totality of the story. Only the plaintiff, only the individual who lived the story knows the story. So it's not necessarily something where the accommodation can be, right? If you're working in a warehouse and every single package the warehouse has weighs 100 pounds, the accommodation can't be, I can only lift 25 pounds because there's no job, right? Here, the accommodation can't be, you do the timeline for me because no one lived the story but the plaintiff, right? But yes, I agree with you entirely that there should be an accommodation made, and there's a lot you can do. You can get creative with that. I personally have had great success breaking it up into manageable chunks or doing it through a third party who is trained, right? Like someone like a therapist, a mental health professional, whoever it is, who can be a support structure as the story is recounted, because that story can be so hard to relive. So hard for everyone, right? And that's only exacerbated by certain disabilities, without question. So I think there's accommodations due there. I just don't know if they could be, and I'm speaking off the cuff. Like obviously I'd have to think about this further, but speaking off the cuff, I don't know if it could be that the attorney would do the timeline for you. They do the complaint for you. They do all the drafting for you, but the story is unique to the plaintiff. And I think that might be necessary.